The masterclass this month is the long-awaited one on how women think. Yes, and Emily is joining me for this one, of course. Guys, finally unravel every mystery about what's going on in that pretty little head of hers. Get this right, and women will think you are magic and treat you like a king. By now, you know that Emily tells it like it is, and all the secrets will be revealed this coming Wednesday, December 27th. Hey, this is right in that downtime between Christmas and New Year's where everyone kind of slows down a bit, so the timing is perfect. How Women Think, this month's masterclass. Don't miss it. Get your ticket now at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X&Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host. You can find me all over social media, usually at Scot McKay with one T, Real Scot McKay on Instagram. With me today is a new friend of mine. He's from the UK, where he has worked for British intelligence and the British government as a spy in the past. But nowadays, he's right out there in the open, completely ready to talk to you and I about body language. And that's a subject that we don't talk about a whole lot around here. So without anything further, Gavin Stone, a best-selling author and a teacher on body language and erstwhile teacher on dating and attraction also is here. Gavin, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you on. You know, I was telling you before we hit record on this particular program, and these guys all know this, that I have a pair of body language experts on my team, but they tend to do something that's kind of their own thing. They're specialists, if you will, in kinesiology and human movement and how to be attractive with that. You're more of a holistic practitioner when it comes to these matters of body language and how to read someone's signals, having been a spy, aren't you?
Yeah, that's more me, so kind of well-rounded.
Well, tell us a little bit about your history. I mean, you're coming from the world of military intelligence, and obviously the more information you can gather, even about the people in a particular target area or a hotspot, as well as the people who are adversaries, the more you know, the better suited you are to go to war with them, right? Or to make peace with them,
definitely.
right? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I mean, the first and most important thing to know that I've been asked to describe what it means to be a spy, and the best description I ever heard was actually from a friend of mine. He said, it's to make friends. And that's what we do. We go out into the world, into foreign countries, and we make friends and give opportunities to people who are working in positions where they have access to secrets. And when we are friends with that person, if we've done our job properly, we can then get them to kind of obtain those secrets for us. So that's a very short summarized version of what we do. And with that in mind, that means you have to go out, you have to build rapport fast, you have to know and be able to gauge somebody fast, whether they're interested or not, whether they are an open and trustworthy person to a degree, and whether you can win them over and get them on side. And you have to do that pretty damn quick.
What the hacking community would call social engineering.
Right? That's right,
yes. Yeah, okay. Very good. So we're all here to get better with women. Let's socially engineer our way into women's hearts. What are the first things you would tell any man listening about how to get better with women by learning how to read their signals and maybe gauge their interest in you up front? Because I know, Gavin, that's probably in the top 5 questions I'm ever asked. So these guys are waiting with bated breath for your answer on this one. So go ahead.
Sure. So, what I'll do, I'll start with like the output of what a person does and how they act, and then we'll go into the signals of kind of, you know, the signals you're spotting, because with women they are very, very subtle, and I'll also address something which I mentioned to you earlier called the alpha male fallacy. And if you go onto a lot of the kind of, you know, YouTubes and gurus and that kind of thing, they'll say, oh, you know, be more alpha, be more masculine. And if you take that into mind and you're going to walk into every room like a gorilla and start growling at people the way that these people give advice, you're not really going to get anywhere. You actually need to be much more approachable. And being this alpha male, if you want to call it that, it's not so much about the physical dominance you have in a room, in your stance and how your body language is perceived, but more about how you are mentally, your mental strength that you project around the room towards people. Does that make sense so far?
Well, yeah. I mean, first thing that comes to mind is almost every time I hear someone in the dating advice world or the masculinity community, if you want to call it that, right, talk about being alpha or beta, they're usually not. It's usually a big show, right? So when you're talking about something called the alpha fallacy, that's the first thing I thought of. You also mentioned the concept of women, you know, kind of giving subtle signals. And I know that tends to be our general understanding of how women operate. And indeed, they love when men lead, right? And they also love not to throw themselves at men because they know that it's generally not going to work well for them. And of course, they don't want to look like blatant sluts, typically. Nowadays, you know, we're headed into the year 2024 here. Women are a lot bolder. Women will make that first move sometimes if they feel they need to, but they would still rather not. So I think these guys are very, very eager to hear some examples of these subtle signals that women might give to show they're attracted, you know.
Yeah, and because they are so subtle, you know, you need to be on board with a lot of them. And I mean, one of the ones that I remember telling somebody about a few years ago was the change in pitch in voice when they're talking to you. And there was one particular female, I'm not going to say her name, but she used to do live streams, and she'd kind of, as more and more people would join, she'd call their name. And I always was amused every time she called my name, because she'd go, "Oh, hi, John. Hi, Darren. Hi, Dave. Oh, hi, Gavin." And you could hear the increase, and he kind of gave it away immediately. So and obviously I did over exaggerate a little bit there, but that very subtle kind of increase in pitch, in voice tone when a woman is talking, believe it or not, is a very, very big sign that she's attracted to you.
Well, it's a sign of excitement, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And maybe
even nervousness.
Yeah, sometimes it can be. And that's the other thing that you have to be aware of here, is sometimes they will kind of say less at first because they're worried about what they're saying. They will want to go for approval. They want to know something is right first and that you agree with it before they jump in and go, "Oh, yes, I like that." So it's something that you have to be very conscientious of when you're talking to somebody. You know, when you're talking to a female, bear in mind that they're not going to always be as bold and say, "Hey, I'm a Joe Biden fan," or "I hate Donald Trump," or the other way around, or whichever way it is. They may wait for you to turn around first and say, "Oh, I'm a Trumpster through and through," and then they'll go, "Oh yeah, me too. I like him." You know,
isn't that something? You know, a couple things just jump right out at me there. First of all, talking about how your pitch goes up and you're more excited, and you may even be also nervous with that. Notice how I subtly lowered my pitch right in the middle of the sentence there. Doesn't mean I'm any less excited about this topic, Gavin. I'm actually thrilled about this topic. I'm already all in. I'm deeply fascinated. Anyway, it seems to me that you're dead on accurate, as I'm sure you are because you're an expert in these matters. But I've observed also how when women stumble over their words a little or not necessarily have the right thing to say to you, that isn't a sign they're disinterested. It's a sign they're trying not to mess up. Yeah. And that's not gender specific. I mean, if we turn the mirror back in our own direction as men, right? That's how we are. We're kind of trying not to mess up, and we're looking for the right words. And even as grown-ass adults, even women can be like that. So if they're a little in awe of you, or they're initially attracted to you, they may not be as fluid in their conversation as they are even with your friend standing next to you. So I thought that was really a good bit of advice for these guys to look for that. The other thing you talked about was how there's a difference in people greeting you when they're attracted to you. That excitement, that energy is there. You know, the opposite is true also. You could tell when someone doesn't like you when they greet you cordially in a way that indicates almost an adversarial position. Like in the old Seinfeld shows, which are, of course, American sitcoms with Jerry Seinfeld. Anytime Newman would come in, the character who was kind of the dorky adversary to Seinfeld, you know, the neighbor nobody wants to have, right? He would always go, "Hello, Newman," right? I think a much more subtle version of that indicates discord or someone being uncomfortable with you. Like when they greet you, they might go, "Hello, Gavin."
Yeah, listen for that outward breath.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You did it yourself then, just when you were demonstrating, you got that, "Hello, Gavin." You know, if you listen for that, it's almost like a kind of, they're paying themselves to say the words.
Yes. Or like maybe another example, if I can put on my theatrical thespian hat here, would be like, "Hello, Gavin."
Yeah.
It could also be like, "Hello, Gavin." Like they're just acknowledging you're there, but they want out because they don't want to have this conversation. If they find you tedious or boring, they may have that uptick in their pitch when they're done, like, "Hello, Gavin." Right.
And with that in mind, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if a female does have an interest in you, they will see you coming. If you work in a particular, say, an office or a restaurant or wherever, they'll see your car pull up. They'll know you're coming, and what they will do, they will be pretending to kind of carry on with their work or having a conversation or whatever. And as you come in, they'll give this very kind of, "Oh, hello," like they didn't notice you. And it's really, really interesting. It's great because, and I've seen it so many times where, you know, that particular person will walk through the door and as the door opens, they'll instantly turn around and they'll know exactly who it is. "Oh, hello, Gavin. How are you?" And they're trying to act surprised, but not, you know, it doesn't work.
Yes, right. I don't know if that's more of a Britishism than an Americanism, because I see that in British sitcoms all the time. But I'm not sure I see that play out in America so often, at least not in the exact context that you mentioned it. Although, anytime a woman feigns that she's not interested, and then when she's surprised to see you, says, "Oh, there you are," that could be kind of a cover that she wasn't wanting to look like she was chasing you, for sure.
Yeah.
I think anytime a woman remembers you from a past conversation, I think that's always a good sign. Always.
Oh, for sure. I mean, compliments are always a major thing to look for as well during any conversation. If they've got, even if it's, and again, females' compliments are very, very subtle as well. They're not just going to say, "Oh, you're brilliant, you're amazing," you know, or, you know, "You're really." They operate different to men, so that they'll say something along the lines of, you know, "I feel safe when you're around," or something along those lines, and you know. And they're complimenting your masculinity more so than an out-and-out compliment, "You're looking good." Like a man will tend to go, "Oh, you've got beautiful eyes." Oh, and they should never use that. I'll give them something better later. But they'll tend to compliment on physical features, whereas women will compliment more on personality type.
How about that? You've never listened to my show before. You probably don't even know me from Adam, and you're talking just like you're a member of our team around here. And guys, you guys listening, that's because he knows what he's talking about. These aren't ideas that we invent. These are observations from the real world. Yes, indeed. Women will give you compliments about how they feel based on the masculinity you're projecting. So absolutely, yes. They'll say things like, "Oh, I feel so safe when you're around." Or, "I love how you got everything under control." Or, "I know you got this all taken care of." If a woman's really smart and a man does something to provide and protect, she'll respond accordingly with some sort of approval, like, "You're amazing," is, well, the most amazing thing a guy can ever hear from a woman. And I know women who have mastered the art of this, and men just love them. And they love them for reasons above and beyond the simple prospect of having sexual intercourse with them. They're like, "Man, this chick is just great. She's such a cool girl." And that's because anytime we make people feel better about themselves, we are cooler people to everybody else. And when we're trying to show our dominance or how alpha we are, how much power we have over someone, we're really just douchebags, aren't we?
Yeah, when you drill down to the heart of it, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, see, my definition of cool is someone who makes other people around them feel cooler. And my definition of douchebag is someone who thinks they're cool, but they're just really not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I tend to see that happen a lot, especially going back tracking slightly to where we were on about this alpha male thing, where there's this fallacy of like putting all the other people down around you to try and make yourself look bigger. Literally is just simply bullying. And it doesn't actually have the desired effect that these people think it does.
No,
it's far from it, quite the opposite.
No. And you know what? I'll tell guys how to affect these responses in women you're talking about, and they'll come back and they'll still be looking for pickup lines. Like I told a story specifically about, not too long ago, about how I used the power of observation to build a conversation with a woman naturally. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I got an email from a guy who took one of the specific things out of that observational conversation and said, I've been going around using your opener where you say this and it's just falling flat and it's not working. Am I saying it wrong? Do you say it more quietly? Do you say it with more energy? And I had to explain to him, I go, I've never taught going around and using that as a canned line to meet women. It just was simply something I observed in the moment. You know, there's a proverbial forest to be seen here for the trees.
Yeah, dude.
Isn't there?
Yeah, you've just taken me back to when I used to teach this stuff, and so many people, you know, the students would be coming up to me, what's the line? What's the line? What do I say? And I've tried to say to them, look, it's not about what you say. It's nothing to do with what you say. It's the delivery. And that doesn't just mean the confidence behind the words. It means you as a whole, as an entire package, you know? And I used to watch these guys, and I used to do a test. So we'd all arrange to meet at a bar where I know there'd be a lot of nightlife. And one by one, I would send them to ask a girl for a date or for a phone number or whatever the case may be. And I would watch them from the minute they'd pep themselves up. And sometimes it'd take them a while and several drinks before they finally built up the courage to go for it. And when I'd watch them kind of build up the courage, stand up and say, right, I'm going for it. And the first few paces were big and long and strong and masculine. And by the time they'd walked over to the other side of the room and got to the bar where the female was standing, it was like watching an infant in elementary school going, please, miss, can I? And it was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. They just fell apart. And
they'll default to the line.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm taking a poll. Who lies more, men or women? You know, right? Yeah. Something from the game. Yeah.
So I devised a system to get rid of that completely, to totally get rid of that anxious feeling that they get, and you know when they're approaching or when they're trying to get the initial contact. And what I did is I put these guys in a minibus, and we drove up to a couple of hours out of the city where I live, to a particular area where there's a nice, great big mall. I'd pair them up and I'd say, right, your challenge is to get rejected as much as possible. And honestly, straight up, this is what I'd say. And I'd say, now you've got to partner up, and your partner has got to pick something really, really, really embarrassing for the other person to say, and he's got to pick the female that you're going to say it to. So you're all in the mall, and he'll turn around and say, right, I want you to go into the jewelry store. I want you to walk up to the blonde lady behind the counter, and I want you to tell them that you have a small, and I don't know what your rules are here with whether you beep things out or whether you, but you know, a small manhood, or that you suffer with premature problems, or
well,
whatever.
I'm sure a lot of the guys listening, present company included, beat out their members often. So
yeah,
talk about it in whatever way you prefer.
I've no doubt.
We're pretty shame-free around here.
Fair enough. Okay, then. So with that in mind, it'd be a completely embarrassing sentence, and I would.
John Thomas would work.
Yeah, why not? And what the idea was is they'd do this all day, and I'd say that, you know, the first, like, kind of before 11s, as it were, they would go up and I'd say the rules are, as soon as you've said it, you can go. But then after 11s to lunchtime, you have to stay around and get a reaction or a reply. And then after lunchtime, I want you to then try and continue from that awkward conversation. I want you to rescue it. 9 times out of 10, by 3 o'clock, you were seeing guys who were falling apart only a few minutes before, walking up to beautiful women and going, hey, you know what? My balls hang really low, but I just wondered if I could have your phone number. I know that was a stupid way to start a conversation, but I really don't care. And they were getting phone numbers, and they were getting dates, and they were getting their confidence, and their demeanor and their energy had completely changed because they no longer cared. They weren't bothered about, whether they were going to get rejected or not. And it built up that it was almost like a form of rejection therapy. They'd built up that kind of attitude of, it happens or it doesn't. It wasn't like everything was riding on it. There was no pressure.
Well, that seems like that approach would be more therapeutic than practical. In other words, you have a bunch of guys who are really scared to talk to women, and this helps cure them of that fear of approaching.
Mm-hmm.
But the woman may still look at you funny when you say, my balls hang low, as a first impression. I got to be honest with you. I take guys out in the field and do something very similar. We go to probably the largest outlet mall in the south central part of the United States. I've never seen one bigger anywhere, but I don't want to talk out of turn. It goes literally for a half a mile. And if you don't think that's a lot, go put 0.5 of a mile in your car in a straight line and then just consider how far you've really gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Anytime a Major League Baseball player hits a home run that's 1/10 of a mile, it would be one of the longest home runs in Major League history. So this is 10 times as long as that. And you can spend the entire day there going into shop after shop talking to pretty girls. It's a college town, by the way. So pretty girls are working there. And you won't run out of time. You will not run out of time. And what I do is I do demos. I walk in there and I charm women over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these guys are a little suspect about what's going on. I've been accused of having hired actresses. Like, there's no way in hell these women are responding as positively as they are to a guy like you, McKay, right? Because a lot of these guys are taller, more handsome, more quote-unquote genetically gifted than I am, and I'm getting all the attention from the women. And what I'm doing is anything but business. Like, show me shoes in a size 10, or do you have any sunglasses, or anything like that. And I just focus on being observant. Like, what's going on? Does she have a unique name? What music is playing? And I start talking with, warm, positive energy that will make a woman feel safe about anything but why she's there. And then the next thing you know, she's actually enjoying herself. And then from there, the conversation flows a lot more easily. And what typically happens when the guys start trying this is they realize that women aren't so scary after all. They're just human, and they actually like to have fun. And I'm also a sneaky bastard, Gavin. I'm a sneaky bastard. We start by talking to women who aren't really all that beautiful. Now, you got to be careful about talking to women who are really, really ugly, because they have no practice, and they really don't know why any guy's talking to them. Okay, because they don't get any attention from a guy.
Yeah.
But if you start talking to women who most men would kind of slot in the quote-unquote average department, right? They're not afraid of those women, because they really don't have a sexual agenda with those women. And then they find, hey, you know what? These women are not so bad to talk to. They're not going to reject me rudely. Actually, in 15 years of doing infield work, Gavin, I've never seen a quote unquote rude rejection. I've never seen one. We never give women reason to do that. As a matter of fact, in field, guys will say to me, now I understand why you've never had a rude rejection. We haven't given them anything to reject rudely. I go, exactly. Yeah. They'd have to be some kind of maniac to, some kind of psycho to respond so negatively to someone who's presenting something so positive. And then, like I said, I'm a sneaky bastard. A couple hours later, it's kind of like the proverbial boiling of the frog, right? If we start talking to these gorgeous, beautiful, attractive women, straight away, these guys would jump out of the hot pot, ouch, I don't want to do that. But we kind of boil that proverbial frog over time. And after they see the consistency of these conversations with women, suddenly, sneaky bastard such that I am, I've started talking to more and more beautiful women. And we're suddenly talking to women who are absolutely desirable. And guess what? The conversation isn't much different.
Yeah.
And one of the things you hit the nail on the head in my estimation, and of course you did because you're an expert, right, is how women start acknowledging masculinity in men as a sign of attraction. Because that masculine-feminine dance is what attraction is all about. Masculinity and femininity around here are defined as the polarizing effect of masculinity and femininity, right? It's the language of sexual attraction. And so when a woman is acting feminine towards you, she's acting like a female human being, it's usually a sign of attraction. That kind of goes hand in hand with acknowledging your masculinity. So when you start acknowledging that she is feminine, Next thing you know, you're having a conversation that is no longer platonic. You're actually flirting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The more masculine traits you display, the more feminine she will become around you.
Elaborate. Give us some examples. I don't want to keep talking about my own stuff because these guys have heard it all. Go ahead and give me some examples from your toolbox, Gavin.
So if we start with understanding a little bit more about what I call the multi-alpha, there are these areas where you can be an alpha male in business, for example, but still fall apart around women. You can be an alpha male. You can be an alpha male at sports. And this is where so many people go wrong. I've seen this time and time again. I'm going to buy a Porsche because I want to look more masculine and successful. I want to go to the gym and build muscles. And I have seen, like you said, some of the most chisel-chinned, good-looking guys with six-pack abs and everything. And they've gone out and they don't understand why they're getting rejected or why they, the women that they're talking to very, very quickly go off the boil. Women are amazing at subconsciously testing you to see if you're alpha. And the way to kind of be aware of this is listen to the questions they're asking. And this isn't me by any means kind of being derogatory towards women. This is what they have to do. It's a survival mechanism. So they may turn around and say something along the lines of, hey, you've got a Gucci shirt. Really? Gucci? I didn't think, kind of decent guys wore Gucci anymore. And they'll listen to how you respond. You might turn around and say, oh, Gucci, yeah, no, I don't normally wear Gucci. I just, I couldn't click, I normally wear, what brands do you like? And you go, no. Own it. Be the man. And go, yeah, I like Gucci. I've got a Gucci shirt.
Yeah, women don't like scared men.
Exactly.
They'll forgive you for being nervous when you approach them.
Oh, for sure.
But over the course of a few minutes, if you're too supplicative or being too beta, I guess would be the word we're using around here today, they're going to think, well, this guy can't provide, can't protect. I'm going to be the mommy figure instead of the lover figure here because I got to protect him instead of vice versa. This guy's so fragile.
Yeah. And this is what you don't want to be. And this is what I teach guys. One of my favorite sentences that I say to them is no is a complete sentence. Have that mental strength. And when going back to what you said as well about leading, which is this is really a great one. I teach, or I used to teach as well. I don't really teach much anymore. But the whole kind of leading concept, stop turning around and saying things like, would you like to go for ice cream? Would you like to go for pizza? What you do is you grab your jacket, you put it on, you go, I'm going for pizza. Do you want to come?
Well, I would even go, do you want to come? Because that's still like a question. I always couch it in terms of a suggestion rather than a question.
Yeah.
Like, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Can I have your phone number? Turns into, give me your phone number. And my favorite 3 words of all time when going from conversation to getting the number are, let's make plans. I love, hey, let's make plans. That's 4 words, but hey doesn't count, right? It's placeholder.
Exactly.
I just think that's so masculine. And it just tickles women when you say that. They're like, okay, because in 3 simple words, you're going, I want to talk to you more. We're going to see each other again, and I'm not going to flake on you. All with those 3 little words.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, just like what you've done there, simplifying things works out so much better all round. There's no need to get overcomplicated. There's no need to worry about lines or being smart or being anything else. And this goes back to what you were saying about you've never had a rude rejection. What a lot of people don't realize is that deep down, she's rooting for you.
Oh, of course.
She wants you to be exactly what she wants. So, she will be forgiving if you're a bit nervous. She will be forgiving if you mumble and stumble a little bit and then clear your throat, sorry, and carry on. She will give you that benefit of the doubt. And that's where you've got to use it to your advantage and really kind of, move forward. And like you say, lead with, let's make plans. Let's do something. I like you enough to move this forward.
Let's use the F word. Okay.
Yep,
how do you know when a woman's flirting with you, Gavin?
Flirting, right. Okay, so there are some obvious ones, which is touching and physical contact when there isn't necessarily a need. Okay. So there's a big difference between a female saying to you, hey, I like your shirt, and a female rubbing your bicep while she's saying, "Hey, I love this shirt," and this is something that women won't touch a man they're not attracted to, unless, obviously, for medical reasons or there's no reason.
Man, if you go to the doctor's office and the nurse comes in and goes, "You know what?
Inject
Keep your shirt on. I'm not touching you." We do have a creepiness problem now, don't we?
Yeah.
Collectively.
So,
yes.
But yeah.
The royal we have a creepiness problem.
So without all the exceptions, without going into all the the subclauses, if a woman is touching you frequently, then that is a definitive sign of attraction. Especially when there's no need to.
Can I add a quickie on top of that?
Oh, please do.
If they start talking about sex with you at all, even in the most inane way, they're not repulsed by you sexually.
Mm-hmm.
They'll never talk about sex by accident. They'll never mention sexual interest by accident. No. Like, guys will come to me and these women have said nearly preposterously flirtatious things. Like, I had this urge just to get naked and strut around the office this morning. What would you have thought about that if I would have done that? And he'll come back to me and go, why'd she say that to me? Is that a sign maybe she would want to get naked with me sometime? I'd be like, yeah. Perhaps.
Oh, dear.
Anytime women are planning sexual thoughts in your head or inviting you to think of them naked, that's pretty blatant sexual interest.
Without doubt. And a lot of the time, again, if women are talking sexually, it's to respond and gauge you're interested in them. So,
and your comfort with it.
Exactly, yeah. Because if you're somebody who shies away from it and go, and you get embarrassed by it, they're probably not going to want to move forward.
And you're going to be crappy in bed.
Yeah,
that's what they're
exactly.
Thinking.
And probably won't be able to dance and probably won't be able to cook much. But the end of the day is, if they're talking about sex, they are telling you, I'm talking about it because I'm thinking about it, and I'm talking about it with you because I'm thinking about it with you. So they're gauging what your response would be. And the best advice here for anybody is, if a woman turns around and says, I'd love to strip my clothes off and get naked and dance around here, what would you do? You turn around and you've got two ways you can do this. You can either flirt back and say, well, I would take all my clothes off as well, but it's so cold and I'd shrink right down to 15 inches. So there's no way I'm doing that in public. And, and kind of see how they respond. Or you turn around and say, probably film it and bribe you. And then I could use that as blackmail material to get you to do anything I wanted you to do. And then see whether she's kind of, how she reacts to that kind of, ooh, and what would you have me doing? So, and this, because this whole flirtation is where it's at. That's more fun for them than direct, the innuendos are much more fun than I want to do X to you.
Well, something you bring up there is something we've talked about quite a bit on this show, which is most men see flirting as a binary act. Either I'm avoiding you or I'm showing blatant sexual interest in you, like flipping a light switch.
Yeah.
Whereas almost all women inherently understand, at least more naturally so than men do, that flirting is like a dial you turn up.
Yeah.
So perfectly happily married adults can acknowledge each other's masculinity and femininity during a conversation and stay pretty innocent about it. And then when that starts turning up sexually a little bit over time, then you can start reading each other's sexual interest. And if you're available and you're getting along, then it gets really horny. Then the next thing you know, you do strip naked and tear each other up in bed.
Exactly.
But women see that more as a process. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very rare you can kind of walk straight up to a woman and say, hey, want to jump into the bed with me? And they're not going to turn around and go, look at you and go, oh yeah, yes, please. Unless you're like Channing Tatum or something.
It probably wouldn't even work for him, frankly. Not 100% of the time. It'd be creepy. Yeah.
Exactly. So it is, like you say, it is an entire process where it's almost like a dance. You've got to gauge it and speed up as they speed up, and as the tempo changes and increases, as they go up a notch, you go up a notch, and it makes the whole process much more enjoyable.
One particular thing you just said is worth underscoring. I think it's extremely important. This idea of a binary flirting situation where you go from ignoring her to expressing blatant sexual interest that most guys define flirting as is actually an extraordinarily rare happenstance. I mean, it almost never is teed up for you like that. No. Hence, most guys daring never to flirt. Because we know that, yet we haven't the wherewithal to realize, hey, you know what, maybe we can be a little bit more subtle up front. like women respond so powerfully to. This is a huge breakthrough for a lot of guys. You know, if they could just be a little playful. Women love to have fun. I don't care what age they are. They love to be playful. And the other thing that comes from that, Gavin, is you don't hold quote unquote flirtation in reserve only for women you're attracted to.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't about necessarily demonstrating sexual interest, you could start simply talking to all women like you wouldn't talk to other men.
Mm-hmm.
And in every situation with every female human being is practice.
Yeah. And that in itself is going to bring you right up in the kind of desirability area, as it were. This sounds really, really crazy, but if you are flirting with a lot of women and therefore a lot of women are flirting with you, women don't want to pick the last tin of beans on the shelf.
Oh, boy.
You know, they want to know that you as a person have options. They want to know that you can go out and take your pick. Even if it's not the pick from everything on the top shelf, they want to know that, you know, other women want you. And if other women find you desirable, then they will find you even more desirable. So, you know, by being, and this is where, again, so many guys go wrong because they're concentrating on one. I want this one woman. She means everything to me. And I'm saying, look, if you want that one woman, then you've got to get a whole load of other women interested in you. Not saying you have to have sex with them. You don't have to, you know, but there's got to be at least some interest. Your social desirability has to be there.
Yeah, you know, you're either sexually desirable or you're not. I have an exercise I run with guys I coach where I say, okay, imagine a beautiful actress. All right, do you think only men who are almost universally attractive to all women find her attractive? Or do you think these ugly schmoes who have, you know, no chance with any woman or basically incels or whatever, do you think they find her attractive also? And the guys will look at me like that's a silly question. Well, okay, now imagine an actress you find unattractive, right? Do only the desirable men find her unattractive, or do all those incel guys also find her unattractive? And they're like, wait a minute, I think I know where you're going with this. I go, exactly. You're either a guy who's masculine and is putting off that vibe that women like, or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So guys will come up to me, Gavin, and they'll go, well, I can get all the average women to fall in love with me, but when it comes time to talk to a woman I'm really attracted to, the wheels fall off. Yeah. I go, that's because something changes. In you. You take that well-practiced confidence and demeanor from talking to all those women and carry it over naturally in a situation where you're attracted to her, and you'll find the response is going to be similar. Mm-hmm. And almost every time, that's exactly what's going on. Their body language, their demeanor changes. So the $1 million question there is, how do we do that, Gavin? What do we pay particular attention to and ride herd on in terms of our own presentation, our own presence, our own body language when talking to a particularly attractive woman? Because, Gavin, we are going to be more nervous. What can we do practically?
Realize that, you know, whatever the outcome is, whether you do or don't get a date, you have to be completely cavalier, totally careless about whether you do or don't get it. Because the minute you're going into this with an objective, the minute you turn around and say, I really, really want to get her on a date, you've screwed up already. So, you know, once it gets like where you don't care, you're detached from the outcome, and you're like, I'm just going to talk to her. And if we get a date this time, then we do. And if we don't, then we don't. I really don't care, because there are plenty of women out there. You know, there's a population of 9 billion people on the planet or something at the minute. You know, there's plenty of them. And if you don't get a date with this one, it doesn't matter. Yes, she might be nice. Yes, there might be things about her that you find really, really attractive. But I promise you, there's another one down the road and round the corner and in the next town and all over the place. So there's no need to kind of put all your focus on this is the one. It doesn't matter whether it's the one. You need to be looking at like kind of having several options. And if this one doesn't end up going on a date you're working out, there's plenty of others. And once you get into that mindset, you get into that kind of changing the tables and the outcome for yourself, that's when things change. So in order to do that, you have to turn it around. You have to stop looking at this is the girl or the female or the woman or I want. You have to go, do you know what? I'm a great guy. I'm a really great guy. I'm getting good at this. I'm doing well for myself. My life's on track. There are a lot of losers and douchebags out there, and she could end up with one of them, or if she's lucky, she could get with me.
There you go. You know, what would the body language expert add there? I mean, as an example, you know, kind of bringing this back full circle, if you go real high pitched and you speed up like Joe Pesci, you know, you're probably less attractive than if you take a deep breath, recognize that's likely to happen, keep your composure, slow down, and enter the interaction more relaxed.
Yeah.
That would be one example. What are some others?
So the first thing, and I love this saying, I actually picked it up from somebody else. Whenever you move like you're underwater. Okay?
David D'Angelo, blink slowly.
Yeah. So you're basically, you know, if you look at like a ferret that's running around and making all these sudden fast movements, it's not something that is considered attractive because it doesn't look like you're in control. It looks like you're very panicking and jittery.
Well, maybe lady ferrets would like that.
Maybe, you never know. So I've not dated any ferrets. So
actually, I don't want to interrupt you, but we had a mated pair of American hairless terriers when I first met Emily and we got married.
Oh, wow.
And the female was a jet black, looked like a little leather dog, right? Mm-hmm. Jet black little puppy with lots of dignity. You know, as far as canines go, she basically carried herself like the Princess of Wales. Meanwhile, the male was like Enos from Dukes of Hazzard, had no game whatsoever, would spin around when people came in the door and was just the biggest dork ever. And the parallels between the canine world of sexual attraction and the human one were uncanny. I mean, you know, this little Princess Diana dog would go, oh my God, if this were the last American hairless terrier on earth, I wouldn't let it stick its dick in me. And they literally would not mate. She would give him no time of day, right? I mean, she would go in heat and run and hide from it. So we had to do artificial insemination and all this crazy stuff because literally the little dog had no game. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Yeah. And well, that is a brilliant point. There is a lot that you can learn from animals, especially in the body language world, where if you watch them, you'll see so many similarities to humans. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's so that in itself, that what you talk about, like having no game, you know, you need to, wherever you're going, you need to walk into whatever it is, like you own the place. I've been in restaurants as a diner and had people think I'm the owner. They've come up to me and said, excuse me, do you own the place? And I said, no, I'm just here for a meal. You know, why? And they say, well, you just look like you own the place.
How about that? Isn't that something?
Yeah, and I don't get it so much anymore, but I used to get it a hell of a lot. You know, I'd be in department stores and people would come up and say, are you the manager? And I'd be in there shopping. You know, I'd have nothing on me to give the impression. It's not like I'd have a name label on me or something like that. And people would just assume I was the manager. So this is the kind of stance you have to have. You know, wherever you sit down like it's your home. You know, it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's a bar, whether you're on a cruise, wherever. Sit in the middle of that sofa, put your arms out on the back, or even if you sit on the end of the sofa, put your arms out at either side of you, cross your legs, and look like it's your sofa.
Let me jump in here for a second, because you're mentioning something that is not a new concept. Mm-hmm. It goes all the way back again to David D'Angelo. Sit in a booth when you take a girl out to a diner for breakfast or whatever, and sit in the whole side of the booth and put your arm out, you know. The feminists would decry this idea of quote unquote man spreading, but remember, angry feminists are trying to diminish masculinity.
Yeah.
And call it all toxic. Meanwhile, right, the women find that incredibly attractive if they actually like men and want to be attracted to men. So this idea of taking up space is actually something men are told by the media and by angry women to stop doing. You know, we've all seen that guy at the party who's trying to protect himself with his beer. You know, he's got it in front of him, like hiding behind the beer, looking around it. You know, the opposite of that is actually more masculine. So you're going these places and people are coming up to you and going, excuse me, sir, can you help me with this problem I'm having, thinking you own the place. Mm-hmm. That's a projection on your part of confidently having a plan. Mm-hmm. You have this place handled. You've cased the whole place. You know it like the back of your hand. You're good. You've got this down. One of the most amazing men I know carries himself such that when he walks into the room, I joke with him about this, everybody within a half mile feels safe. oh, so-and-so's here. Nothing bad could possibly happen. And it's a
Yeah.
remarkable, remarkable presence. I don't know if we can all naturally match that, but I have had people come to me in situations where I feel particularly comfortable and accomplished and like I have a plan of action and I know what I'm doing, and they'll treat me like I own the place or I'm in charge when I'm not. I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, this is incredibly attractive to women. I love
sure.
every bit of what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
And going back to what you said there about where that dating advice for sit in a booth and do the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter where you sit, it doesn't matter where you stand, where you sit, where you go, as long as you do it with such purpose and confidence that even if you're sitting in a corner, you light that corner up.
Yeah. And the thing is, most men obviously don't process attraction the way women do. Mm-hmm. This idea of having a plan, this idea of fomenting a safe environment literally makes women horny.
Yep.
That is the masculine impulse. So when a woman is acting more female, when she's getting more playful, when she's starting to smile more, women laugh when they're having fun. You don't even need to be a comedian, although we all know around here that if you're funny, it's a superpower.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But you can make a woman laugh simply by helping her have fun. And you do that by creating a safe environment and having everything under control so she doesn't have to worry anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And of course, fun and funny are two different things, and you've got to be very careful. I mean, yes, you can have that superpower of being funny as long as you don't turn yourself into the jester that she runs to every time she's, kind of having a bad patch or dumped by an alpha or whatever you want to call the terminology these days. You don't want to be that go-to kind of, hey, cheer me up clown.
Comedy with dignity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't be Chris Farley and expect to be attractive.
You
as much as I love Chris Farley.
Yeah, I mean, pepper a few jokes in throughout your date if you are that kind of person, which is more than plenty. And it's the same as if you decide to go down the route, like I say, fun and funny and fun with flirting. But I do something which I call flirty banter.
Nice.
And what we do with this is where this comes back again to what you were saying about the dial. You're starting at 0. You don't want to go straight into complete sexual innuendos from day one. When I say day one, obviously, I mean, within the first few minutes. When you're first starting this, what you want to do is it's got to be subtle to start with. It's got to be, hey, watch what you're doing. Otherwise, I won't be responsible for my actions. Or, you keep doing that. No, you never know what I'm going to end up doing to you. And I'm waiting to see where they go. What do you mean by that? It's got to be something that they've got to question. Is he flirting with me to start with?
I think the magic combination for men in terms of understanding how this all works is women are very heterosexual and very horny, but they're also very scared.
Oh, yeah.
So when you lift the fear of you or of the situation and replace it with that aura of safety and I've got everything handled, then they come out to play a little bit, and then you can start turning things a little more playfully horny, and they eat out of your hand like a bird.
Yeah.
And men don't understand this. And then they see it happen in action when I take them out in field, and they see how replicable and how gosh darned consistent it is. And they're just freaked out almost.
Yeah. And so you have to remember, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier about the rejection. They're more frightened of being rejected than we are. That's why it's left. That's why it's left to us. Yeah. They don't want to walk up to a guy and say, "Hey, handsome, do you want to come on a date with me?" And the guy goes, "No."
Well, hold on a second. The whole idea, and we can go back. Obviously, you were, like I said, an erstwhile teacher of men in dating and flirting, right? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of bad advice that came out during the early pickup artist era because really Mystery and David D'Angelo and Ross Jeffries were ruling the roost, and whatever they said was parroted and copied by, other wannabes. This whole idea of neg hits, you need to knock her off her pedestal a little bit so you don't know that you're easy, is the worst advice ever. Because, you might succeed at showing her you're not all that impressed by her yet, therefore she might try a little bit harder. But that's only if she has low self-esteem, and most women do have low self-esteem. So on the surface, it may look like it's working a little bit, but when you start insulting women and when you start saying you're not interested, This is the opposite of making them feel safe and comfortable. And see, really, it's just a camouflage of your own insecurity.
Yeah,
because if
sure.
you're secure enough to go, hey, you know what? There are a lot of women in this room, but I think I'd rather talk to you. You, I like. You're projecting that confidence and you're choosing her without the need to like knock her off a pedestal.
Exactly.
And the next thing you know, simply because you're the guy who isn't fawning all over her and so utterly in awe of her, she feels like, okay, here's a guy in my league and I could talk to him and there's no mess and no fuss. It's all on the up and up.
Yeah, I hate this thing, this negging or whatever they've called it. I think it's absolutely dreadful.
It's a game.
And like you say, it not only shows insecurity in yourself, it's very demeaning towards women. And so the reason I don't do this so much anymore, I didn't want to be branded as a pickup artist because there is a difference between somebody who wants to go out and have sex with a woman and somebody who wants to go out and get into a relationship.
Well, the difference is also someone who likes women.
Yeah.
And someone who's simply horny and has a physical need. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, I'm not saying that doesn't mean, I've gone out and had one night stands. I've gone out and I've helped other people to do the same kind of thing. We're all only human at the end of the day.
We're all horny here, like I just mentioned.
Exactly.
For sure. Sex is always going to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only way to get better is to keep practicing. The more you have, the more you learn. And, this pickup artist thing seemed to be very much focused on teaching guys how to get out, get laid, and then drop them like a hot potato and then move on to the next one. And it was developing like kind of emptyless, meaningless sex for these people. And they weren't finding, these were the same guys who originally just wanted somebody to be in a relationship with, ended up turning into, kind of players, if you want to call it that. And that's why I kind of stopped, because I thought I don't want to be in that category. I'll help people get good with women when they're not very good at it. I'll help them to understand the psychology behind it and the body language behind it, the science behind it. But I'm not going to be classed as one of these sleazy pickup artists that just teaches guys how to get laid.
Yeah. Nowadays, 15 years later, the same guys teaching that stuff are now married with 3 kids.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so funny. Last question before we wrap up. Conspicuous by its absence from this conversation has been any mention of those old school straight-laced body language tips like, oh, she's playing with her hair or she's pigeon-toed or she bats her eyelashes. She's really attracted to you. Guys just roll their eyes at that, which of course I guess is a body language tip in and of itself. Like that never happens. So what I really appreciate about what you've brought to the table today, Gavin, is it's a lot more practical. It's a lot more holistic than that. Do you, however, have a couple telltale signs that guys can look for that almost never fail? Or do you agree that that's kind of a unicorn to find something like that?
So body language, when it comes to the actual physical traits, I mean, there are one or two things, and one I'll say, if you're chatting with a female and she's dangling, if she's wearing high heel shoes, she's dangling the foot, dangling the shoe off the toes. You know how women do if they cross their legs and they let that loose shoe dangle?
Yes.
That is pretty much an invite. So,
well, she's got to have the right shoes for that.
Yeah. So, and the other one is,
it's hard to dangle a pair of Vans,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to say, depending on obviously on what she's wearing. And the other side of it is, so there's this misconception when it comes to hair. And I've heard this from body language experts. Oh, if she plays with her hair, and that's complete not a BS. Women play with their hair all the time. They're constantly playing with it. It's not a sign of flirting. What is a sign of flirting is when you're coming towards them, or or they see you come into the room or whatever, and all of a sudden that's when they're kind of trying to straighten their hair out, or they're doing grooming gestures. They're making sure there's no creases in their clothes. They're smoothing their clothes out and making sure they're picking little bits off to make sure they look appropriate and look their best. If they start touching up lipstick and lip gloss, just before you're about to walk into the room and that kind of thing, these are signs, physical signs, that they care about their appearance in front of you, and those are some of the more tangible ones you can look for. And then the only other one is pupil dilation.
Pupil dilation, yeah, when the middle of their eye, the black part widens up so they can let more light in.
Yeah,
that is an absolute physiological tell.
Yeah,
we brought up something that reminded me of something else. The grooming bit. It is also a common trait amongst all primates, actually.
Yeah.
That they will groom other primates who they have affection towards.
Yeah, yeah.
So like if she's straightening your tie or picking lint off of your sweater, she at least likes you.
Yeah,
She doesn't
definitely.
find you distasteful. Yeah.
So, but more importantly, and I know this was going to be primarily based on body language, but look for what's going on in the context of conversation. You know, if she's talking about shared interests and shared tastes and similarities, anything that is similarities wise is great, especially if there's any future planning in conversation.
Yes, and if she's asking you about where you come from or trying to get more personal information about you and who you are, that's a sign of interest as well, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, other things are excuses to interact. Like she might turn around and say, for example, hey, can you do me a favor? I don't know much about tires. I'm not a mechanic, but I'm not sure if my tire's okay. Ask yourself why she's asking you.
Instead of some other bloke, right?
Yeah, she could, especially if she drives past like 5 tire depots on the way to work and lives with her dad, and has 5 brothers who are all mechanics. So, these are things that women do. It's like an excuse to interact. And what it does by asking for help or advice, especially if it's not needed, it shows that they trust your judgment. It shows a bit of vulnerability. It gives you the chance to take that masculine stance again, and it gives them the chance to give that feminine stance of help me, help me.
Yes, it's an invitation by the feminine to be masculine and therefore to turn her on.
Exactly.
That's what she's hoping for, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be the tires on the car. It could be anything from a light bulb to just asking your advice in general,
Right.
Especially if it's like, hey, it's my uncle's birthday coming up. What do men like? What kind of cologne should I get him, or that kind of thing. There's loads of people you can ask. And women, when they're asking these kind of things, tend to ask their women friends for gift ideas, not men, because men are crap.
Along the same lines, women will put themselves in your way.
Yeah.
Like in your line of sight, or if it's a supermarket, they'll just end up standing next to you, picking out the same can of corn you are 3 times in a row during the same, shopping experience. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. His name is Gavin Stone. He's an author. He's a body language expert and a former spy for the British government. You can find out more about him by getting his book on Amazon. And what's the title of the book you would most recommend to guys of the ones you've written, Gavin?
So my body language book is called How to Tell If Someone is Lying, which is really, really great. But there are lots of tips in there as well for like kind of understanding when people are attracted to you. It all goes hand in hand.
Brilliant. And when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Gavin, Gavin, you will be teleported magically to Gavin's book on Amazon. Also, if you go to my Amazon influencer page at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon, you'll find Gavin's book and a couple other of his books right there at the top of the queue, especially if you're listening to this show shortly after it was released. Gavin Stone from the UK, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Great show and exactly what these guys came here for. Thanks, man.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And gentlemen, if you have not lately visited mountaintoppodcast.com, get in on my audio programs. They're short and they're sweet, and they help bring you up to speed on areas that most guys are sorely lacking in right here, right now, as we move into the year 2024. One in particular is called Women and AI. Guys, if you're behind the times on how AI is being used not only by dating apps, but in the dating world and by women, then you're getting fleeced. And you don't want to be fleeced. You want to be on top of things, and you want to win rather than keep losing. So Women in AI will cost you about as much as a bad Starbucks date. Similarly, my newest audio program, Yes And, will show you how to start a conversation with women when you're out and about, using the principles of improv. And nowadays, when everybody is so adversarial and looking to start a fight, it seems, on social media, out there in the real world, people are starving for real, actual, friendly conversation, especially women. And this is how you give it to them without looking like a dancing, performing monkey or like, well, anything resembling Cosmo the Hairless Terrier with no game. Both of those audio programs and so much more can be found at mountaintoppodcast.com. While you're there, please visit our sponsors, Origin in Maine. Jocko Willing's company will help make a man out of you, if nothing else will. also Hero Soap Company, and thekeyport.com. When you get anything from our three main sponsors, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get an additional 10% off. Also, gentlemen, I'm here for you on the phone. Schedule time with me. 25, 30 minutes is free. We'll talk about where you are right now, where you want to be with women. You can schedule that at mountaintoppodcast.com as well. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.